If you could be best friends with either Hermione, Ron, or Harry, who would you choose? So I was asked this question on a podcast recently, and I very quickly chose Ron. And Flick, the host, who happens to be the body double for Hermione from the films, by the way, go listen to a podcast after this video. But Flick sounded surprised. She said she asks all of her guests that question, and nobody had chosen Ron before. And that just baffled me, right? And I think it's largely down to how the films really watered down and ultimately destroyed the character of Ron Weasley. They took his bravery and his intelligence and his wisdom and everything that makes him a good friend, and they either removed it or they gave it to other characters, namely Hermione. So in this video, I'm going to look at the key differences between book Ron and movie Ron. So let's talk about Ron's bravery in the books, because this was one of his defining characteristics. He was this unwaveringly loyal friend who would literally stand on a broken leg to defend Harry, which, if you haven't read the books, is something he does in The Prisoner of Azkaban. They just didn't put it in the film, which is a consistent theme through the movies. These moments of Ron's are just lost on screen. Let's look at some examples, shall we? So as I mentioned, The Prisoner of Azkaban, we get this scene in the Shrieking Shack where Harry, Ron, and Hermione are face to face with who they believe to be a mass murderer, Sirius Black. Someone they think betrayed Harry's parents and wants Harry dead. Now in the books, despite having a broken leg, despite being barely able to stand, Ron positions himself between Harry and Sirius Black, and he tells Black if he wants Harry, he's going to have to kill all three of them. He says it once, and then Sirius tells him to sit down, otherwise he'll damage his leg more, and Ron, despite being in pain, says it again, even more firmly. He doubles down against who he believes is a mass murderer. That is proper bravery, okay? But in the movies, Ron is relegated to the background, just whimpering about his leg, while movie Hermione gets the line about, if you want to get to Harry, you'll have to go through us. And this wasn't a one-off, right? Let's look at the Devil's Snare scene in The Philosopher's Stone. Now in the books, all three of them work together. Hermione identifies what it is, Harry suggests using fire, and then when Hermione panics saying there's no wood to start a fire, Ron is the one who keeps his cool and reminds her she's a witch. She can make fire with magic. The whole trio work together, each playing their part, each being useful in some way. But in the movies, Ron just panics and screams for help, while Hermione calmly solves everything by herself. And then Harry has to tell Ron off for taking credit. Now I understand they took away the potions riddle from Snape, which is supposed to be Hermione's thing, and Ron gets the chess and Harry gets the flying keys. They kind of have to give Hermione the Devil's Snare, but by doing that, it completely changes the dynamic, and it makes Ron look useless. And then we have the spider scene in the Chamber of Secrets. Now in both the books and the movies, Ron is terrified of spiders. It's his biggest fear. We see it as his boggart in the following book. The way he handles the spiders in this, completely different from book to movie. Book Ron faces his fear. Despite being terrified, he follows the spiders with Harry because he knows they need answers, because his friend needs help. And even though he's scared out of his mind, he keeps his fear at bay to do what needs to be done. He even manages to keep enough of his wits about him to spot the Ford Anglia and help them escape. But movie Ron just whines and complains pretty much the whole time. He basically begs Harry in the films to go back. He's completely useless in the face of danger. And it's not just the big moments either. Throughout the books, Ron is constantly standing up for his friends. He throws a crocodile heart at Malfoy for mocking Harry. He gets detention for defending Hermione against Snape. He frankly is always ready to stand up and fight anybody who insults his friends. The movies kind of strip all of that away. They take this brave, loyal friend who would literally stand on a broken leg to protect Harry, who would face his worst fear to help solve a mystery, who would always stand up for what is right, and they turn him into this cowardly, comic relief character who's just there to scream and to panic, to be the butt of the jokes, and to make Hermione look better by comparison. And it fundamentally changes who Ron is as a character, and it does a massive disservice to one of the bravest Gryffindors we see in the whole series. So one of the biggest differences between the books and the movies is how the movies completely undermine Ron's intelligence. In the books, Ron is actually really smart. Not in the same way as Hermione, with her books and her studying, but in a completely different way that's just as valuable through the series. Let's look at some examples. Take the wizard's chess scene in The Philosopher's Stone. In both versions, Ron plays chess, but in the books, it's established early that Ron is a chess master and that he can think strategically, multiple steps ahead of whoever he's facing, which is why he consistently beats everybody who plays against him. So when they face McGonagall's giant chess set, it makes perfect sense that Ron is the one who leads them through it. That he's the one who can see the moves ahead, who realizes that the only way to win is to sacrifice himself. And in the book, during that giant chess match, it is mentioned that on multiple occasions, Ron notices Harry and Hermione are in danger, and so he darts around the chessboard, saving them time and time again, before eventually sacrificing himself. In the movie, we don't really see any of this. We see very little of these heroics until the very end of the match, which sort of backs up our point about dulling his braveness. But also, we don't get any of his strategic thinking, his ability to read the game well enough to save them. Sure, like I said, we still get his sacrifice at the end, but it's just not the same. He's not built up as a chess master in the same way. And beyond the chess, the films really strip us of Ron's knowledge of the wizarding world in general. Like in the books, Ron is their guide to wizard culture. He's the one who grew up in the wizarding world, so he's the one that explains things to Harry and Hermione when they wouldn't know them because they grew up with muggles. Like in the Chamber of Secrets, for example, when Malfoy calls Hermione a mudblood, Hermione in the books has no idea what that means, because why would she? She grew up with muggles, she's new to this world, just like Harry is. It's Ron who explains how horrible that word is. He's the one that provides the cultural context and helps both Harry and Hermione understand why everybody reacted so strongly. What does he do in the films? Somehow, Hermione already knows what mudblood means, so she explains it to Harry, while Ron just sits in the background, throwing up slugs. Somehow, they manage to take Ron's role as the Wizarding World expert, as someone who's lived in that world for 11 years longer than Hermione and Harry, and they gave it to Hermione, even though it makes no sense for her character. And look, it's not just the big moments, right? Throughout the books, Ron is constantly showing his intelligence. He is quick thinking under pressure, like in the Deathly Hallows, when he mimics Pettigrew's voice at Malfoy Manor, or when he stops Hermione from stunning Grawp during the Battle of Hogwarts because he realizes it would bring down half the castle. He gets similar grades to Harry. He's able to perform magic mostly to the same level. He's just not this bumbling idiot who can barely hold his wand right. But in the movies, they gave us Ron hitting himself in the face with his broom, even though he grew up around magic and has been flying since he was a kid. They take every opportunity to make him look stupid, to make him the dunce of the group, and to make the successes he has kind of look like accidents. And what's really frustrating is they took all of his clever moments and they gave them to other characters, usually Hermione, who somehow now knows everything about the wizarding world despite being just as new to it as Harry. And fundamentally that changes the dynamic of the trio, because instead of each of them bringing something valuable, each of them having their own type of intelligence, we just sort of get Hermione being perfect at everything while Ron bumbles along behind them. So there's a really important distinction that we need to make between being funny and being the butt of the joke. Because in the books, Ron is genuinely hilarious. He's got these quick, witty comebacks, he's got this great sense of humour, his timing is great, and he uses jokes to diffuse tense situations. But in the movies, they turned him into the person we laugh at rather than the person we laugh with. Let's take the scene where Snape calls Hermione an insufferable know-it-all. In the books, Ron jumps to her defence. He stands up to Snape and he says, "You asked us a question, and she knows the answer. Why ask if you don't want to be told?" It's brave, and it's kind of funny, saying what everyone is thinking, but Ron is the only one with the nerve to say it. But in the movies, Ron agrees with Snape, and sort of twists the knife, making Hermione feel worse. Let's look at the Devil's Snare scene again, right? In the books, when Hermione panics about needing wood for a fire, Ron's response of, "Are you a witch or not?" is genuinely funny. He points out how ridiculous Hermione is being, and it actually helps solve the problem. But in the movies, after spending the whole scene screaming in terror, Ron has the nerve to say,
"Lucky we didn't panic."
And it's played for laughs, but we're kind of laughing at how pathetic he is, not at a clever joke he made. And that tone is repeated over and over. In the books, Ron's humour comes from his wit, from his sarcastic comments about the ridiculousness of the situations they're in. He has this ability to make Harry and Hermione laugh when things get dark, and as readers, we laugh with them. But the movies strip all that away, and instead we get Ron making stupid faces, or saying obviously dumb things, or just being scared of everything, or trying to take credit for things he didn't do. They turned him from someone who uses humour to someone who is the humour. He goes from someone who makes jokes to the person who is the joke. And it's a shame, because book Ron's sense of humour was one of the best traits of his character. It wasn't just about being funny, it was also about helping his friends by lightening dark moments. But the humour in movie Ron is all at his expense, and it's about making him look stupid or cowardly or selfish. So let's talk about how the trio works in the books, because it's actually a perfect balance. Each member brings something different, and they each fill a specific role. Harry is our hero, the one who's brave to the point of recklessness, and who follows his instincts. Hermione is our logical mind, the one with the book knowledge, the one who can solve all the puzzles. And Ron is the heart of the group, the one who understands the wizarding world and keeps everyone grounded. In the books, it's kind of like a 40-30-30 split, with Harry taking the lead, but Ron and Hermione being almost equally important. But in the movies, it's like 45-55, or like 35-65. Hermione becomes pretty much more important than Harry most of the time, apart from Harry's like circumstantial chosen one status. Whereas Ron is just there. Like, look at how they handle group decisions. In the books, all three of them contribute. Like, when they decide whether to go with Harry to find the Horcruxes, Ron is the first one to say they're gonna go with him. He makes it clear he's all in before Hermione has even joined too. But in the movies, it's Hermione who says that. Let's look at how they handle emotional moments. In the books, when Hermione's being tortured at Malfoy Manor, Ron is beside himself. He's screaming her name, he's pounding on the door, throwing himself against the walls, completely breaking down, desperate to save her. In the movies, he doesn't really seem that concerned. They took all these moments, all these times where Ron was essential to the group, and they just gave them to someone else, or cut them completely. In The Half-Blood Prince, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are talking about the future. In the books, all three of them are having this conversation, but in the movies, Ron is sitting on the steps behind them, like he's not even part of the discussion. And it's not just the big moments. Throughout the books, Ron is consistently essential to the group. He's the one who understands wizarding culture, he's the one who explains things that Harry and Hermione wouldn't know, he's the one who keeps the mood light when it gets dark. The movies just strip all that away. They make him this tag-along character, this third wheel, a deadweight, so to speak. And so rather than the trio all bringing something equal, all having a valuable contribution, we get Harry and Hermione as the main duo, with Ron just sort of there. In the books, things are really tense when Ron leaves the Horcrux hunt. Because like I've said, he's the one that keeps them grounded and keeps them light. Though not when he's wearing the locket, of course. In the films, it doesn't really feel like they notice he's gone that much. One of the biggest crimes of the movies is how Ron's character change completely messes up his friendship with Harry. Because in the books, these two are best mates. They are inseparable, they have this bond that runs deeper than just being friends, right? That's not to say they were romantically involved with each other, it's just like, they're best friends. If you've read the Shadowhunters series, they're like Parabatai. But in the movies, that almost feels pushed aside, and Harry and Hermione's relationship almost feels more of a focus. Let's look at some examples. In The Order of the Phoenix, when Harry's been left in the dark all summer, in the books, Ron is the one to explain everything, who tells Harry they wanted to write to him, but Dumbledore made them swear not to. And it's this really honest moment between friends where Ron is genuinely upset that he couldn't tell Harry what was happening. But in the movies, we're singing that old song again, they give that to Hermione. She's the one who explains everything while Ron just stands in the background. And like I said before, it's not just moments that are given to other characters. Some big moments for Ron's character and Harry and Ron's friendship are just cut completely. When they first meet on the train, in the books, Harry and Ron really connect here. They talk about their insecurities, about their worries, and about their families. It's this really important moment that explains so much about why they become such close friends so quickly. And about why Ron, when he looks in the mirror of Erised, sees himself standing alone. And those themes carry all the way through to why Ron eventually leaves in the Deathly Hallows. But in the movies, they just eat sweets, and that's it. That's their bonding. These key moments for Ron's character are removed over and over. In the books, Ron constantly defends Harry, apart from when he's feeling particularly jealous in the Goblet of Fire. In the books, he throws a crocodile heart at Malfoy for making fun of Harry. He tells Snape off for picking on his friends. He stands by Harry when Seamus calls him a liar in The Order of the Phoenix. Now granted, that last one does happen in the movies, but for the most part, all of that was cut. All those moments were given to other characters like Hermione. Even in the Goblet of Fire, when Ron is acting jealous, the books explain why through Hermione. They give us this insight into Ron's insecurities, into why he might feel overshadowed. But in the movies, they don't explain any of that to us. So Ron just comes across as a bad friend, with no explanation, no context, no understanding. In the books, this relationship is deep and it's complex. It's a brotherhood, right? It's strong enough to survive jealousy and arguments and even the dark magic of the Horcrux. But in the movies, they just turn it into something less. Something shallow, something that feels almost secondary to Harry and Hermione's relationship. And that's such a shame because Harry and Ron's friendship was one of the cornerstones of the books. It wasn't just about being best friends, it was about finding family and choosing your brothers, about standing alongside each other no matter what. The movies missed all of that. They missed the depth, they missed the complexity, they missed what made this friendship so special. And it's all because they watered down Ron's character. And so I've spoken a lot in this video about how many of Ron's moments they gave to Hermione. So if you'd like me to talk about Hermione's character in more detail, you can watch this comparison of book Hermione against movie Hermione.